This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
And her book was just published in, we were March to October of the same year. From beginning to her book party was on, October 29th, 2025. And she had 300 people at her launch party because guess what? She knows people because she's a podcast host.
Yeah.
So being an author from being a podcast is such a lovely combination because most of the time you've been interviewing people, you've been having conversations with folks, and now you can draw upon those relationships that you've been cultivating and curating and cherishing to make your book launch a community event. It's really cool.
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and this time I'm speaking with Tina Dietz from Twin Flames Studios. Hey Tina, thanks for speaking with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Marv.
Thank you very much. First of all, this is going really old school, into the past. Going from discovering the world of podcasting to starting the great, I say great because I've really enjoyed listening to it, the Start Something show.
Oh, dear Lord. Yeah, the Start Something show was my first show, but I had been guesting on other shows, which at the time were more in the realm of what we called online radio at the time. There were online radio networks. We didn't call them podcasts. And I had fallen in love with the medium because when I was growing up, I loved books. I loved microphones. I loved anything involving a stage. And I was one of those kids who was always either creating mixtapes or making up big radio shows. So when I was back in a previous career, when I was a business coach, I started getting asked to be on different shows. And that's where I fell in love with the audio medium and eventually wanted to have my own show. So I hired a really fantastic company, still there, Cash Flow Podcasting. Ben Kruger's the owner, wonderful guy. And I had such a fantastic experience launching the show with him that I approached him afterwards and asked him if he wanted to work together.
Yeah.
And not only did I end up producing my show with him, and I was still a business coach at the time, but I ended up becoming a podcast coach and a producer through that experience.
Yeah, and what was it that interested you in podcasting? Because we've spoken before with each other, and we went into the old style where it must have been tricky because you were saying that you were even using dial-up for internet, which to some people nowadays, the younger people, they wouldn't know what dial-up is, but it was not easy to do it that way then.
No, it definitely wasn't easy to do it then. And I think we were probably into broadband by the time that online radio came along. But we used to do things in the coaching industry or for education called telesummits. And you would log on to the computer, but you would listen. You weren't watching people share their expertise. You were listening to it. And you could also dial into a conference line. And companies like freeconferencecall.com, and teleclass, telehealth, I don't even remember what they were called anymore. But it was a big deal to be able to get people together online. And we were all experimenting with different ways to be able to get people together in groups online without crashing the internet, without crashing our connection. So it was a cool time to be experimenting with things. And then, of course, things evolved into Skype and then Zoom, of course. And those of us who have been in online business, I've been working from home for over 16 years. So for those of us, during the pandemic, to see people switch over to Zoom and everything, a lot of us were helping folks who were new to that world because there's certainly a small percentage of us, but who had been doing it for years.
Yeah, sure. Because even myself, before podcasting, my younger brother was working in Japan. So I was used to doing Skype calls with him anyway, that way. So the technology wasn't new to me, but it was interesting because a lot of people, like you said, they were being introduced to that technology in around the lockdown. All these people suddenly started podcasting, wanted to know how it all worked. But for some of us, it was almost second nature because we're all already used to doing that.
Exactly. So my kids even were at an advantage during that time because they were used to us, traveling or digital nomading. And it was quite funny because both of my kids who were in high school at the time helped their teachers with the technology because they were so used to being around me and my businesses and working remotely. So it was pretty funny, but I'm glad that they were able to do that.
As an aside, it's just a shame that they haven't had the cast from the Brady Bunch do podcast, because you'd have that classic screen of the Brady Bunch there on a Zoom call, which is like perfect.
Would be amazing. I would love to see that.
Absolutely. So from there to the inception of Twin Flames, and you carried on the leadership sort of like speaker thing as well, where you started these podcasts as well through Twin Flames, with the Drink from the Well, which is the limited series for team leaders that you'd made, and then the 5-minute advice for authors as well, which is very much about giving advice and being speakers, telling people how to do these things.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of limited series podcasts because that allows you to create some really fantastic in-depth content that is very targeted for a specific purpose without necessarily having a long-term commitment to it. So, as our company has evolved, we used to have a podcast production division, as well as our audiobook division. And then we moved on the actual podcast production and launching services to sister companies to focus on audiobooks and also to focus on our new venture, Podcast Books, where we're taking podcast content and transforming it and basically using it for ghostwriting published books. So as we've changed our focus over the years and changed our audiences over the years, we've been able to use podcasting in a very, I would call it a safe way, kind of a low risk way, to develop excellent content, to network with those audiences, to create more connections, networking, all of those kinds of things with the markets that we wanted to explore further. And so, Drink from the Well, when you're talking about more corporate type of leaders, very, very different market than most of our most of our audiobook authors, who tend to be subject matter experts, entrepreneurs, consultants, speakers, coaches, and folks who are, independently in business for themselves for the most part, or for retired executives, for example, is another category that we do produce a lot of nonfiction audiobooks for. So it's been really nice to be able to apply the principles of podcasting in this conversational, wonderful format we have that is so easily accessible to folks. Audio is by far the most accessible medium that we have. You can listen when you can't read. You can listen when you can't watch. It goes everywhere with you. And then being able to then take that content and repurpose it into downloads, books, certainly great content strategy for marketing and things like that. But going as far as like courses and things like that is also possible with podcast content. So that's what really those short form podcasts, those limited series, are what gave me the bug to then try our hand at the longer form content of the books.
Yeah, I mean, what you were saying there about the limited thing, I thought immediately of the almost like the course work style sort of podcast, like that Claire Waite Brown does with the Podcasting 2.0 show, where she's basically giving a step-by-step guide for podcasters as to different things that they can do in the world of Podcasting 2.0 and explain to them the change that happened to the RSS feed. And that is like a course, because each episode is a different element. And then, so every episode altogether is very similar to what you were saying, where then you've got from start to finish, this is basically how you go about these things. And that's an interesting way to do podcasting, because there's all different ways of doing podcasts.
Oh, sure. As long as it's entertaining. You can pretty much do anything you want with podcasting, as long as it's entertaining. That's really the core of it, right? And how how long can you speak for and still be interesting? And on our own, truly, most people, it's about 10 minutes. We can be interesting for about 10 minutes on our own. But in a conversation like this, we can go much longer because we can feed each other's curiosity about what we're doing, or we can have really in-depth conversations. And that's one of the big magic parts of podcasting in my mind.
Agreed. I think because, like you said, so one person will say one thing, and as much as we might have, I'll admit it, we have a list of things that we're following in this conversation. One of the greatest things that I like about podcast is when you pick up on things from each other and you go off on those tangents, and that to me is a fascinating bit to podcasting that you don't find in very many other forms of media.
No, you definitely don't. Because, in a book, certainly that's been planned and really curated and, thought through. And that has incredible value. And even in a video, I know we're going to be in video as well as audio here with podcasting, but if you're talking about something that's highly produced video that, you've got the lighting and you got the sound and you got backgrounds and you get, editing, and it takes a lot to get that organic conversational feel from a lot of other mediums. And a lot of other mediums don't allow for the delightful surprises of going down different rabbit holes and exploring what might present in the moment.
It's interesting because when you get these shows where they have like celebrities or something on these sort of shows, I'm thinking of there was a film podcast called Real Blend, where the three presenters of that would have people like Quentin Tarantino on as guests. But in a way, that was sort of interesting because they got more from him. And it's almost as though he knew that it was a completely different medium to a radio show, corporate radio show, where that would be very much produced. They'd go in there with a specific subject or a list of things that they need to get. Whereas it's almost like he came in and some of these celebrity guests know what they're doing. And they come with this openness that you don't get in any other format because they're open to this conversational style that is almost reined in by most other forms of media.
I agree. We did produce for a time a celebrity-based podcast, and it was such a different animal. But part of it was the folks we were producing it with, the company we were producing it with, were so concerned, or the fact that these folks were celebrities. But the celebrities themselves were very relaxed and very open about things. It was only the host and her team who were very concerned about what got said and how it got said and all of that. I just found the juxtaposition very interesting, that there's a lot of people who surround celebrities that seem more concerned about how they come off than the celebrities themselves. And I always kind of wonder about that. It was a very interesting experience. I don't know that I would do that again because there's so layers of legal and, oh my God, the logistics of it were just insane. So not something I think I personally would do again, and more power to folks who have those kind of high level celebrity shows.
Absolutely. So let's look at this in more detail then. For as an example, there's two books that the company have worked on that really I was fascinated with, which are the books that you've done. One of them is based on Salad with a Side of Fries, that podcast. So how did that come about then with that one, particularly at the moment, with going from the podcast to the book format? What was the conception? How did it go from the podcast to a book?
Podcast to book, yeah. So our Podcraft method, we've been developing over this last year and a half or so. So it is a young form of business, but the nice thing about that is we're able to bring our full creativity to it. And the podcast host you mentioned from Salad with a Side of Fries, Jen Trepic, she and I have known each other for a bunch of years. She's a co-founder of the Podcast Professionals Association, of which I'm a founding circle member. And we'd known each other in the industry for a long time. So it was actually at PodFest in Orlando in January of 2025 that we were at a breakfast together, and I was sharing with her about what we were creating. And she said, I have been wanting to create a book for the longest time. I don't have the time. I keep sitting down. I think I know what I want to do. Maybe this could help me out. And that was really what the conversation started. And she decided to take a chance on what we were doing. And with 500 episodes, we really had to first, and this is what we do with all of our authors, really get the vision down. And while we do use technology in this process because there's a lot of data in an RSS feed.
Yeah.
But we're able to bring in the RSS feed and do a lot of analysis of the data, largely through relational databases or vectorized databases. Not that I get too technical, but to be able to parse the data and give us the intelligence about what is this body of work that is this podcast. 500 episodes, that's a lot of data. So we worked with Jen to determine, like, these are the themes you talk about. These are the things that you repeat a lot. These are the strengths that you keep talking about. Like, which of these themes do you want to focus on for this first book? She's clear she wants to do more than one. And so, once the themes are done, then we're really going through a very traditional process of a book brief and a book outline, and then a collaborative process to rank the chapters. But instead of a ghostwriting process where we were interviewing Jen as an author, a potential author, we're using her podcast as the body of work to draw from. So it has her authentic voice, like her real in the moment, like planned but not scripted content that she's been developing for all of these years. And so and then there's a collaborative editing process, of course. The author is involved in the entire process. But instead of the book taking multiple years to develop and then get published, which is pretty typical for a really high quality book, we started in January. We started in March. And her book was just published we were March to October of the same year. From beginning to her book party was on, October 29th, 2025. And she had 300 people at her launch party because guess what? She knows people because she's a podcast host. Yeah. So being an author from being a podcast is such a lovely combination because most of the time you've been interviewing people, you've been having conversations with folks, and now you can draw upon those relationships that you've been cultivating and curating and cherishing to make your book launch a community event. It's really cool.
Wow. A 7-month turnaround from start to finish is really quick.
It's really quick for most book processes. And there are some places out there be like, write a book in 30 days or, all of that. But the quality is not necessarily going to be there in that fast of a turnaround. That's going to be, but it's hard to make an argument for having a quality book in that short amount of time. And her book, we didn't do any paid advertising on the marketing. There was no funny tricks that we did or anything, but, within a couple of days of her launch, she hit number 5 on a major paid list on Amazon and was in the top 20 for the biggest health and wellness list on Amazon. It's really, really hard to crack the top 20 in general women's wellness books in any book. It is a very, very competitive market. So I'm thrilled for Jen and what she's up to, and she's just scratching the surface on what that book is gonna do.
Yeah, but you've got her voice in the actual writing itself there. You can hear her voice or read her voice in there, which means that would be attractive to people as an every person, an everyman. And I'm trying to think of the phrase to use, but as she is, not a big celebrity, like one of these big celebrity cuts. She's not Gordon Ramsay. She's not this person, that person, the other. She is almost like the person that's reading the book, almost exactly the same as them, which is what would pull them in because it makes sense to them. It's almost like they're reading themselves in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying here, and I totally agree. It's extremely conversational. These books, they do have some. So there's different types of nonfiction. There's prescriptive nonfiction that tells you what to do, and then there's reflective nonfiction that invites you in to reflect on your own experience in comparison to, say, the authors. And we're definitely more on the reflective side of thing because the books are so conversational. And we're not talking about taking transcripts and cleaning them up and just slapping them in a book. That's not what we're talking about here. This is much more like ghostwriting, developmental editing, really crafting the topics from the podcast and drawing different pieces of conversations and curated information that has happened over time with these podcasts. And so the end result with Jen's book in particular is something that people can go to for advice, but it feels and reads like the wise advice of somebody who has been there, who has helped a lot of other people, but she's so grounded and so real in her approach to doing things. And that's why she's had such a successful podcast and such a successful health coaching practice. And so now there's this other way of reaching her and something else that she can do to build her ecosystem as an expert in that space. And, she's not the only one. The other book that we had coming up recently was a complete category creator in the world of mental health. And, we're really proud to be part of that.
Absolutely. And then there's this as well. I think this is brilliant what you've done. The emergency responder book as well. I think that's incredible that you've done that. And also the fact that when we were speaking beforehand, it's another one where both of us were, shall I say, shocked that there wasn't a book like this before now.
And it's such an underserved population. The book is called Helping the Helpers, and it's a mental health clinician's guide to working with first responders, all different types of first responders. And this came from a show that I absolutely adore. It's got about 200 episodes now called Responder Resilience. And it's co-hosted by three hosts, a retired fire lieutenant, David Dashinger, and then the other two co-hosts are both mental health professionals. One is a licensed social worker, mental social worker, and the other is, I believe, a psychotherapist. And they have really ranged in their conversations about what it is to be a first responder, like fire, police, EMT, veterans, people who work in animal services. There's a huge variety of first responders we don't even think about who help people every day. And the suicide rate among those folks is ridiculously outrageous, unbelievable. And there's not that many resources for mental health practitioners who want to serve this population. In fact, this is the first book that's been created in that space. So it's already been ordered in bulk by the New York Fire Department. It's already been ordered in bulk for other organizations across the U.S. And now the people behind the book, the three authors, are creating courses for mental health practitioners, as well as they're doing speaking gigs to organizations to really impact this population. So, I mean, if the book can save lives, I'm here for it.
Yeah, and as someone who, my cousin's husband is a paramedic, so
Mhm.
I know from speaking with him about the pressure that he's under a lot of the time and these stressful situations. I mean, all these things take a toll on people, and it's awful that there's nothing there for them to fall back on to be able to help them through this stress and what it causes for them.
Yeah, it's brutal. And the systems that are surrounding these folks, to help remove the stigma of seeking help for mental health, to provide more resources, and even to do more prevention, to understand what are the ways that we can make the way that these businesses, because it is a business, these industries are constructed, how do we make them more survivable, livable, sustainable for these incredible people who put their life on the line.
Yeah. But I mean, what you've said so far as well goes towards what I've got written down here, which is that what you're doing is helping in some ways towards this, where it's difficult nowadays in today's world for people to find the time to do these things that they want to do. And the work that you're doing is really important for these people because, like you said, you're giving them their dream in a way that they dream of being a writer. But as you said, this person said to you that they just haven't got the time to do it themselves. And this that you're doing is useful for that.
I certainly agree with you. I mean, I can speak for myself too, that being somebody who is probably more comfortable speaking than writing. I mean, I'm a good writer. I, certainly had to get through grad schools. I did a lot of writing and, published and all of that kind of stuff, academic world. But to sit down and actually think through and craft a book is such a time-consuming experience for somebody who is, like most podcast hosts, like wants to be producing conversational or audio content or audio and video content. And you don't even know necessarily what you have with the body of work that you've created. Because when we're speaking, many times we don't even know how awesome the stuff is that comes out of our mouth or the insights that come out of a conversation. And then there's so much data in a podcast library. How do you query that? How do you actually parse that data? And so that's what we've been working on. I mean, I'm very grateful that my business partner, who's also my husband, has been designing software for 30 years. So my experience in the publishing world and the access that I have to just world-class developmental editors, ghostwriters, people who can really vision books, and then the technical know-how, bringing those two things together is a nice, really a nice solution. Because when you're a podcast host, you've done 90% of the work to write a book, but you're not getting any of the accolades for that. You're not sure how to, if you say you're a podcast host, it might not get you the paid speaking gigs that you're interested in. But if you say that you're a published author or a best-selling published author, why shouldn't you use the work that you've done, that you work so hard on, to help you create that book and, save you time in the process?
Yeah. You've just reminded me of a point I wanted to pick up on earlier and I'd forgotten about, which was when we were talking about the use of AI. I'm thinking that to me, one of the best uses of AI is the analytical side, where it will look and it will analyze what information is there, the data. And that must be a huge help with speeding the process up, because what I'm guessing is that it will analyze what's there and then tell you, or whoever's working on the product, it will tell them what to basically look at, which areas to look at. And then from there, I'm guessing you take that information and then somebody builds the book and the work from that information that is passed on from what has been analyzed to be the way to go.
To one extent or another, there's yes, it's one of those things. It sounds simple until you do it, and then you realize that the amount of data that you have to deal with and the querying. And I had somebody ask me just the other day, I said, well, how is this different than feeding my transcripts into ChatGPT? And you can give that a try and you can see what you'll get. And I don't think you'll be very happy because, first of all, trying to get enough bandwidth into the public version of Claude or ChatGPT, it really only holds so much information. And then it forgets. So there's the issue of hallucination. There's the issue of forgetting the data. And then there's the issue of, well, what are the actual prompts or the actual process of somebody who knows what a good book looks like, that actually knows what a great book brief or even a sellable concept for a book looks like. That's expertise level. So AI is only as good as the expertise of the person wielding it. And that's why we run into issues when you have services that claim that they can, oh, we're just going to make this course for you, it's all AI. Oh, we're just going to make this book for you, it's all AI. It's only as good as the person who knows what they're doing. And this is where so if you know what you're doing and you're already a writer and you already know what good looks like and you already know exactly the kind of book you want to write and you want to use AI to assist you with that, well, certainly have at it. But most people don't have all of those skill sets. And so that's, part of the value of hiring anybody to help you with your book is you're looking for somebody who knows what good looks like. And so we bringing that to the table along with technology where that doesn't forget, doesn't hallucinate. When we put everything into the types of database work that we're doing and the types of prompting that we're doing, it's calling vectorizing a database. And it basically chunks the material in a way that when we're using the software, it creates a much better output, a much more reliable output in a way that we're able to analyze it in a deeper way so that we're really getting a voice print for the author. We're really getting the major themes that they're talking about. And so we can make good decisions from that when we actually write the content of the book.
Is there a standout moment during this time, from starting in the world of podcasting to now? Is there a moment that stands out to you as being important? I suppose almost, is there something where you think that you learnt something during that period that you think would be helpful to other people coming into this world?
Oh man, there's been so many moments. There are a couple of things that I've really learned over the course of time with podcasting. The first memory that comes to mind was in my very first show, the Start Something show. I was grateful enough to have the contacts to get folks like Dr. John DeMartini and Marcy Shimoff, who was a New York Times bestselling author, and she was in the movie The Secret. Did you remember that? And at the end of my interview with her, and she was only the second person I had ever interviewed for a podcast, she's like, "Can I have a few more moments of your time?" Yeah, of course. And she said, "You're obviously really excellent at this. This is one of the best interviews I've ever had. How am I as a guest?" And I was like, holy crap. I told her, I said, "Marcy, actually, you're only the second person I've ever interviewed on a podcast." She goes, "Well, what?" she was sincere in her disbelief. But what she told me, she's like, "Well, this is home for you." She goes, "You need to be doing this more. You need to be in this world." And of course, I took that to heart, given, what I knew about her and her expertise. So I would say to folks that if you feel at home in this medium, and you're like me that grew up with either, making playlists or mixtapes or making up shows on your own through, fake radio shows, follow that curiosity. And the other thing that I've learned a lot about podcasting is you really need to decide what you're using it for. Because if it's not purpose driven, it's not going to work and it's probably not going to be good. So that short form, podcasting, the limited series, I would rather see people create 8 episodes of something that's really excellent and then market the crap out of it for a year than have people just drone on and on and on and on and on about whatever for years on end, for sure.
That's great. Great. So what shows do you like to listen to yourself, podcasting wise?
Between the audiobooks and the podcasts, I only have so much bandwidth. But yeah, I know. It's relatable, right? But I actually really do love Salad with the Side Fries, Jen Treppick's show. And I do regularly listen to one of our other authors, Jennifer Brown. We have a book of hers called The Shape of Change. It's change that's based on her show, The Will to Change. And she is one of the most brilliant conversationalists I have ever seen in my entire life. I'd put her right up there with Brene Brown, Alec Baldwin. Like her show is so excellent. So I listen to that show a lot. And the other person I listen to a lot is someone called Katie Gaddy Towson. And the show is called Money with Katie. And I know that's a show that gets millions of downloads. And it's extremely well thought through and produced. It's really a masterclass in how to research a topic well and then have really entertaining conversations about it. So that's one that's more about personal finance, but it's also interesting to watch somebody go from personal finance advice into the bigger conversations about society and equity and politics, even as we've been in these really unprecedented times. So really love that show as well. Those are 3 favorites.
Right, that's great. Thank you very much. This has been fun. So how can people get in touch with you, Tina?
Oh, easy peasy lemon squeezy. I am, if you look at my name, Tina Dietz, I will show up first on Google, so that's always easy. But if you want to find out more about our company and what we do, twinflamesstudios.com is the place to go to find out about our audiobooks, about making a book from your podcast. And also we offer monthly webinars for authors. They're completely free. They're all on demand, and they're all expert panels of different topics in the industry. So those are a little bit like podcasting for us, but they're highly educational and really purpose-driven to help authors make the most of their experience with their books.
Oh, that's great. Great that you're offering this service to people that, with these webinars. Anyway, thank you for speaking with me today, Tina. This has been great fun.
Thank you, Mark. This has been great. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You can contact myself just by going to themarvzone.org, where all of the links for all of the socials and the where you can find the podcast are. They're just there on the opening page. And so is the contact details for the email. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.
This podcast is a proud member of PodNation Media Network. Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jittery an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at PodNation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in, and Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash. Fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.